Hello, and welcome to the first revision screencast for the health topic for the AQA Sociology A-level exam. And the question I'm going to be dealing with today is the question of, is health socially constructed? Now, we obviously don't know what questions are going to come up in the exam, but this is an overarching question that we can see lots of things and lots of questions have been based on before, whether this is linked to mental illness, whether this is linked to disability, whether this is linked to health, whether this is linked to the body. And this screencast intends to deal with some of the general points that you can make in relation to, is health socially constructed? So what this screencast is going to examine is the fact that there are lots of different definitions of health, that the biomedical model has a role to play in this debate on whether health is socially constructed. We'll break down this idea of social constructionism and what does it mean as something is socially constructed. Then we're going to apply some examples to the body and to disability, and throughout this we'll be discussing some theoretical perspectives which can help to explain the view on whether health is socially constructed or not. The first thing that I'm going to deal with is the range of ideas that exist to do with whether there is a solid definition of what health actually means. And this is one of the big issues in most of sociology. Can we define the concepts that we're dealing with? And Blackster, who's a key sociologist in the health topic, argues that there is no universal agreement on what health is, whether that's cross-culturally, whether that's cross-institutions, whether that's between social groups or individuals. There is no universal agreement on what it is, which makes it then quite difficult to deal with as a concept in sociology. And medical definitions, which tend to focus on the idea that health is the absence of disease, or it's the biological aspect of being a healthy person, and whereas we've got these lay definitions, so the definitions that human beings like you and I might use, talking about whether you feel healthy or not. And there are huge disparities between these two kind of social groups. And the other thing to be aware of, which we have looked at in lesson, is the idea that the World Health Organization, who are dealing with health, across the planet, have continuously had to update their definition of health because it's either been too broad, or it's not included other aspects like social health and mental health, or it hasn't defined what is a adequate level of health to be dealing with when we're talking about these topics. Now, the main idea here is that sociologists think that these medical definitions are unhelpful because health is socially constructed. It's a product of society. It is not an objective concept that we can use and everybody takes for granted and understands on that level. And Blackster provides some arguments to say that age constructs health, and younger people tend to define their understanding of health in their everyday life based on their physical ability, whereas as people get older they tend to define it based on what they can do and the tasks that they can complete, and in a kind of more broader level as opposed to physical levels of fitness. Scambler has the idea that it's actually capitalist industries that are redefining health, with products that are continuously on the market telling us that in order to be healthy you have to have these products. And we see this with things like perhaps Fitbits, or the obsession with those water bottles that are infused with fruit and cucumber. And then we've got Jumit that argues that drug companies are also engaging in this by trying to find medications to suit every problem and fix every problem. And there's a lot of Marxist arguments throughout there that there's exploitation going on here. But there are all kinds of different definitions of health which don't really bring in this idea of the biomedical evidence that does exist. So we have to deal with the biomedical model. And here it's that health is an objective scientific concept. It's used across Western medicine. It's also the essential basis for the National Health Service, the NHS that we have here in the country. And Hart, a very important sociologist in this area of sociology, identifies the features of the model. So the biomedical model focuses on the idea that disease is a physical concept, It also talks about that doctors are elite and they are the decision makers and they have the power to determine what is healthy and what is unhealthy. They honestly believe that as from this approach and from this model that medicine is curative and that is the answer to our problems, and we need to be finding drugs and medication that suit all of the issues that we're facing in society. They also feel that illness is temporary and therefore it's something that can be fixed and something that can be overcome, and therefore we can go from a state of being unwell to being healthy in a very relatively short period of time. And they also think that treatment is something special, and that comes into play when we see the kind of specialised doctors and facilities that we have in place in our society. And the biomedical model, therefore, does not believe that health is socially constructed. It's something that's scientific. There's a lot of evidence to back it up from the, sciences. And therefore, this is what we should be using to understand health. However, sociologists have a much broader understanding and a wider understanding of what this actually means. And health is not something that we can just measure based on our biological, physical and physiological processes that are happening in our body. There's something much wider than that. And a key point is that, it would appear, if we flick back here, that it's not touching on the idea of mental illness, which society is beginning to gain a lot more understanding about. But it's also not dealing with lots of other factors based on social group, based on power and social institutions in society that play an important role. So here are some ideas that will deal with the idea that health is a social construction. So we've got various ideas based on ethnicity, age, gender and class. So there's evidence to suggest that there are some subcultural differences in terms of how symptoms are interpreted, and various research that's been done to suggest that there will be certain ethnic groups that feel that they are unwell, but when they go and see a doctor, it's not defined as a problem. Or we've looked at cases and lessons where certain mental illnesses in certain ethnic minority groups are considered as a normal part of aging, something like dementia, whereas it's something that in other cultures they believe needs to be treated and needs to find a solution, or we need to have some kind of therapy to deal with it. In relation to age, people define age perhaps in the levels of pain they feel based on everyday activities and the discomfort that they have in performing their daily routine. We speak about the idea that men and women can define health in different ways, and men and women experience different levels of health based on social expectations that are put up on them, and men are expected to handle pain and show their masculinity through being able to put up with these kinds of ideas. And there's also, ideas in class that the working class tend to have a better, resilience might be the wrong phrase, but they tend to put up with ill health for a longer period of time before getting it checked out. And all of those are showing that there are some sort of cultural factors that are playing a part here. We've also got the idea of the sick role, and that deals with the idea that by being, you have the potential to be deviant if you fake illness, and that's a big thing about how socially we deal with illness and label things as deviant. And we also deal with concepts that come from researchers like Foucault that talk about power and how doctors have the ability to define what's normal and what's not normal. Questions around labelling and how society can put labels on individuals, which might lead to self-fulfilling prophecies. But also we put labels on behaviour we don't fully understand. And mental illness in particular is one of those areas that, because it's a very individual thing, we cannot fully understand what's going on in the mind. And that's where Zaz comes in and defines it, and says that psychiatry is fraudulent. And there's also this moral dimension that sometimes people don't feel like they should report their illness and they should report their symptoms because they feel that they will be judged. So consequences of being obese or smoking, and what's that going to have an impact? And people have this moral dimension, and all of these areas are not necessarily focused on that biological scientific thing that we've talked about, but it's more to do with the social construction of what health is. So we're going to apply this to the body, looking at various sociological perspectives here to discuss this, to demonstrate that there are aspects of health that are created by society. So the feminist argument looks at the idea that health and the body is constructed by powerful, privileged men. In the media companies who produce the magazines and the TV shows, they are predominantly run, owned, edited by powerful, privileged men, and it plays into this idea of patriarchy. And we deal with the ideas presented by Laura and Martin, as you can see in this image on the right, that things like Photoshop are creating this image of what it appears to be healthy, even though they're quite unrealistic images that we see, and that's having a big impact on what our understanding of health is. The Marxist argument is the idea that we've got this increased level of consumerism in society, and there's all these kind of products that are put out there, anti-wrinkle creams, vitamins, even health and fitness products that are put out there to be like, if you buy me, I will make you healthier and I will change your life. And therefore these capitalist institutions are making significant amount of money out of redefining what health is. And, you know, if health means that you have to have your, you know, be at a certain level of BMI, you need to buy these products in order to be like that, or you need to buy these products in order to look like that. And then the postmodernist argument kind of goes against these views and actually says that us as individuals, we have the power now to construct our own identities, and our bodies are things that we work on, and that's the idea of body products that comes from Schilling. And we work on our bodies, and we exercise the idea of self-surveillance, where we are aware of the image that we're putting out, and we address that by changing our identity to appear healthy or you know, to appear attractive. And then the application to disability, and this comes from the researcher Shakespeare, one of the most famous researchers in relation to disability, talks about the idea that society actually disables people. It's not that people are born disabled, and the biomedical model would kind of force the condition on the individual. It's their fault that they feel like this. But actually the application to disability is to do with society is built for able-bodied people. And therefore, it is not that the person who we're talking about is disabled, it's that our society is not built for somebody who is not considered in the same physical setup as somebody else. So our society, in lots of different ways, it's made for people that can hear, it's made for people that can see, it's made for people that can walk, it's made for people that can talk. And this suggests that actually our society is creating disability. It's not that disability is something that perhaps in the biomedical model perhaps thinks of it as more of a problem. This is contributed to by the media, and how the media can sometimes put images out there to suggest that if in cartoon characters, sometimes people who are disabled are seen as evil or mischievous in some ways. And we've discussed some examples of use of how it's used in the In-Betweeners, but also how we've looked at how it can be used in programs like the Undatables, and how that presents people who are disabled. But also the fact that lots of buildings are built not having disabled access in mind, and you know, putting in a ramp or putting in a stair lift or putting in a lift is an afterthought, as opposed to what we should be thinking about. You know, if we're going to produce a society, we need to produce a society that deals for all people. And this then plays into the idea that we have disableism in society, and huge amounts of discrimination in relation to the benefit system, employment, and you know, access again to buildings and other aspects of society, that we see a huge amount of discrimination happening, but also the views that people tend to have towards disabled people, therefore in the form of prejudice, is causing society to create disability as opposed to the other way around, and opposed to this idea that somebody is objectively disabled. So I hope that screencast has been helpful in trying to demonstrate to you these questions that can come up in relation to, is health socially constructed? And we need to begin to think about and broaden our understanding of, yes, I spoke to you about this in topic 1, but you can bring in all the ideas that we've looked at across the course to answer that question. How is health socially constructed? As opposed to just focusing on the biomedical model and the views that the biomedical model presents, what else can we talk about and what else can we bring about here? I hope that's been useful.